The Florida Podcast Network, the voice of Florida.
From Mallory Square in Key West to the Governor's Mansion in Tallahassee and all points beyond, you're listening to the Florida Beer Podcast, powered by FloridaBeerBlog.com, your source for all things related to the craft beer community in the Sunshine State. And now your host, Dave Butler.
Welcome to another episode of the Florida Beer Podcast, powered by FloridaBeerBlog.com. This is Dave, your host and author. Last week, we were in Plant City, which is in Hillsborough County. We are going to stay in Hillsborough County, but obviously we're going to the biggest city draw that there is, and that's Tampa. And with Tampa, we are going to be at Bootleggers Brewing today. Now, Bootleggers has an interesting story because it started off as a homebrew shop that ended up opening up a small brewery next door. They moved locations, and the homebrew store actually sort of fell away, but the brewery aspect of it is going strong and has been doing so for many years. Obviously, they have added a kitchen, they have added a number of other things, and we spoke to their current head brewer, John Santaniello, and what I thought was just going to be a rundown of the business ended up being a much larger conversation about the craft of craft beer, and it was absolutely fantastic. I learned a lot in this episode, and I really am excited to bring it to all of you. Now, obviously, there's more than that going on, but I'm going to let John talk about it because he does a better job of discussing all of these things and learning all of these things than I ever could. So I'm going to step back, and we're going to listen to John Santaniello, head brewer at Bootleggers Brewing in Tampa. Enjoy. With an interview, I will not ask this question, but because of the background of Bootleggers, I do have to ask this question. Sure. How did you get started in brewing beer?
Well, I'm sure it's much like most people and how they get started into brewing beer. I loved beer. I loved the taste. I loved the flavor. And then I discovered craft beer drinking, Newcastle, Sam Adams back when I was in my 20s. And I just have an inherent need to know how things work. So I just started to learn a little bit more about it. I got an opportunity to work at the Craft Beer Cellar, if you're familiar with that. That was on 60 in Brandon, Florida, there for a while. And
it seems that was a location that was a stepping off point for a lot of brewers in this area.
It was. So that was really interesting, not only to meet a lot of people, but to see a lot of different styles of beer, to be able to explore a lot of different styles of beer. And I always enjoyed the history too, how beer became, how it's different in every region, depending on what grows there, the story of the IPA that everybody knows about, how it was named. And then I got an opportunity to do some hands-on brewing, after I started at home, like everybody does, brewing in buckets. I got to work at Levin, local Tampa brewery. I was working with KJ there, doing some cellaring, started brewing as well. Then I went to Four Stacks down in Apollo Beach. I was brewing with Mike Frey down there for a while. And then we all know COVID hit and kind of changed everything. So then I was just staying home with the kids. Wife is a nurse. She works nights. So that was actually a great opportunity, despite COVID being an unfortunate time. And then my kids are back in school now, so I have more time to spend to pursue a passion like this. And this opportunity came up where Bootleggers needed a brewer, and I had some availability, and Sean's kind of let me take the reins. He told me, it's your playground, do what you want. And I took that to heart, and I've kind of made it my own. Not that it's mine by any means, but I like to take a little bit of ownership and make it feel like, it's part mine, and I take pride in what we do here.
Awesome. And you actually mentioned something interesting because my daughter is in love with Top Chef. And as we watch a lot of them, you'll listen to all the people that are on the show. And, I worked at this restaurant, and I worked at this restaurant, and I worked at this restaurant. It's not so much, it's, here are all the chefs that I learned from. And listening to you, it's a lot the same way. Do you find that is a common experience for brewers in craft beer, either here in Florida or just nationwide, that it's really not how you got started, but it was once you have the basics at home, who are the people that you apprentice under?
I absolutely believe that, especially because going from homebrew to production level in a commercial brewery is a lot different. I mean, the same principles apply, but having to manage all of the minutia, it has to be much more planned and organized. So to have followed others that have done it already and kind of had procedures in place, I think is important. I think that's, what's helped craft the Tampa craft scene, if you will, with the experience that we've had here, that kind of, it's such a close-knit community, and we tend to share, not only recipes, but procedures and things like that all the time.
And I was going to say, how much of it is learning how different brewers make recipes, and then how much of it is learning how different, I'm going to switch the gear and a little bit, technicians do the technical and the scientific, shall we say, side of the process. Absolutely.
It's always interesting to see how others do it, to hear how they do it, whether that be, oh, okay, that's interesting, maybe I'll try that, or you can taste, a certain effect that it had in the beer, and maybe you think, maybe I don't want to do that. But I think, it's beer, it's brewing, some of it is trial and error, but I think that's what makes it fun. You get to experiment a little bit. Obviously, nobody wants to drain a beer and dump it down, but it's always nice to try something different, be a little bit bold, whether it be with the ingredients that you use or the techniques that you use. We've been trying to push the limits with some of the yeast that we're using, some of the temperatures that we're doing, some pressure fermentation, slurming, and it's interesting that, I try to take things that I've learned in person, also things that I've read, things that I've seen, but also other things, technical things that I've learned and in my background, whether it be, how to rewire the glycol chiller or, just things like that with my, I used to work on boats. I used to build engines. So some of that technical prowess, I guess, helps in the brewery, being able to see the bigger picture and being able to, how can I use this equipment in a different way? How can I use this piece to achieve what I want to in this flavor profile? So it's fun to blend the two, the art and the science.
It definitely. And it seems like, which is more advantageous to have when you come into a situation like this? Can you learn the culinary side of things and you really need to have the technical standpoint back? Or is it good to have a good grasp of the culinary and you can learn how to fix things?
Yeah, I think having a good grasp on the culinary, understanding flavors, having a palate where you can detect different flavors, whether it be goods or bads, off flavors. And I think also having the vernacular to describe what you're tasting, the different sensory experiences that you're having. A lot of the times when I talk to, if you will, the lay person, talking about beer, you don't get a lot of the same adjectives that you might get from a brewer. So I think those things I think are harder to learn quick as opposed to how to technically do something. I mean, a lot of it's try clamps and, it's pretty self-explanatory. So I don't think you need to be technically advanced to be able to produce great beer, but I think you do need to have a good palate to produce great beer.
Interesting. How difficult was it for you to develop the palate that you are currently using today? And what kind of processes did you go through? Because I would like to know myself, to develop that, not just develop the palate, but also to develop the vocabulary needed to express the palate.
Sure. I spent a lot of time in hospitality. I worked in restaurants for a long time. I cooked in restaurants for a long time, not at a chef level by any means, but it exposed me to a lot of different ingredients, a lot of different flavors. And I like to cook at home. I like to show my kids how to cook. So we talk about ingredients. We talk about how things taste, the texture, just all the different things about what describes that particular ingredient. And then how we can use it together with other ingredients to kind of create the best flavor that we possibly can. You tend to do more reading. I read about hops, I read about malt. You read the descriptions that other people use, and then you taste a beer and you're like, oh, okay, this is biscuity. This is a bit of a honey flavor, even though honey's not being used. So I think it's a mix of a lot of things. My employment background working in hospitality and kitchens, enjoying cooking at home. If I'm having a cocktail or if I'm out, my kids always like to poke fun of me because I'm always smelling everything. Before I put it in my mouth, I'm smelling it. I want to as much as smell is part of the flavor, I like to separate it too, so I can detect, okay, this smells, whether it be citrusy, floral, earthy, whatever it may be. I'm always trying to do that with everything that I eat, drink, just trying to explore it with my nose, with my tongue, with my palate, and find different ways of describing what do I taste? Is it fruity? Is it floral? Whatever it may be. So it's just, I'm still training my palate. I think there's still a lot to learn, I think. So I'm always trying to, push the limits, like we said, but also keep training myself and keep trying new, fresh ingredients.
That's awesome. Do you feel that there is a particular pull because you are, I guess, first and foremost, are we in Tampa? Are we in Brandon? Are we in Riverview? Where are we?
That's a great question. I've heard it referred to as the fringe before because it's kind of the fringe area. I call it Brandon. I think technically our address is Tampa. Riverview is about 5 feet down the road. So, it's kind of hard to tell, but also when people talk about Tampa, I think a lot of people consider Tampa, Brandon, Riverview, most of those areas part of the greater Tampa area. So whether or not our address is Tampa, Brandon, Riverview, we consider ourselves part of the Tampa, craft scene.
And because you're in the Tampa craft scene, I feel that brings a certain, not only pedigree, but also an expectation for some of the beers, because everybody that comes to the state or lives in the state, when they're thinking of craft beer, the first municipality they think of is Tampa. Do you feel any pressure being a part of that, or has it been a lot more forgiving and welcoming than you anticipated?
Well, it's certainly forgiving and welcoming, but we realize the bar that the Tampa craft scene has set, and we are constantly trying to meet or exceed that bar. There's been so many great breweries and so many great beers that have been produced. So I'm constantly trying to hold myself to the best standard that I can to feel confident and proud that I can put my beer up against some of the best beers in the county or in the state.
And are we close enough to where the heart of that is, to where you get a lot of people that will come to Bootleggers as part of a larger tour of craft beer through Tampa?
That's a great question. I wish I knew a great answer to that. I think any brewery would always love a little more business, but I think we are in an interesting area. We're close to 301, which gets a lot of traffic. We're close to the Causeway, which gets a lot of traffic. We're close enough to the port, and the airport, which gets a lot of international and domestic travel. We've got the, the hotel right here. So we tend to get visitors. I mean, even myself, when I go out for a night out in the town and go check out some breweries, there's just so many that it's hard to hit a lot of them. So you tend to find an area where there's a high concentration, at least to go out in the town. We aren't in that scenario here in this plaza that we are, but I think having the food that we have and the atmosphere that we have we're not necessarily a late night destination. It's more of a throughout the day, more of a family atmosphere, while we still have events in the evening. So I think we're in a unique position, even though a lot of breweries tend to be the same overall, the same feel. We are trying to bring a little something different to the table, but not only with our atmosphere, but with all our offerings. We have, cider, we have mead, we have seltzer. We have the ability to produce different products here that other breweries don't have maybe the luxury to use the ingredients that we do. So that's nice. So we can have different offerings. Like I said, we have gluten-free offerings. We even have wine and things like that. So we try to appeal to everyone. We try to use everything we can to get people in the door. I think any brewery owner here in Tampa would love to know that the answer to that question. How do you get to be part of it all? But I don't know. We're going to keep trying.
Awesome. And that's got to be difficult for you to have so many different products you make a lot of that stuff here in-house.
Yeah, we make it all in-house. It is difficult. There's 28 taps that we have that we keep.
Well, and not only that, but just listening to other breweries speak, the laws in terms of producing a cider, you've got major differences between that and mead. I would assume that mead would fall under the same laws as the ciders.
Yeah.
How do you keep all of that in? I mean, it's a roomy location, but I would assume it's not infinite when it comes to space.
No, it's 5 pounds of crap in a 4-pound sack, for sure. we do our best trying to stay organized, stay on top of the paperwork. I'm an organized person. I'm a data person. So if you go check out the brewery later, I've got spreadsheets and notes everywhere, to try and keep everything organized. I'm always trying to, keep the fermenters with as much data on them as possible. It is difficult. It is a challenge, but it's also fun. If it wasn't as challenging as it is, it wouldn't be as much fun trying to keep all the different things going. But it allows us to explore a lot of different products, a lot of different flavors, and present a lot of different offerings to the customer, especially if they're looking for something a little different, or if they have a particular palate that they, a lot of times you get people that, I don't like an IPA. Sure. Okay. That's fine. We have a lot of different things that we can offer them. So part of the challenge is to manage all that and to juggle it, but it's part of the fun as well.
And how much of it is also dictated by the market? Because, seltzers were massive a couple years ago. And while I don't think they're going to be completely gone, they've definitely come back quite a bit. And you do still have some seltzers. You've got a carrot cake seltzer,
we do.
Which is,
yeah.
I am curious. But it seems like right now the big thing is RTDs, but you sort of mentioned like even behind the RTDs, I'm starting to see mead become a big thing. It's like, because you got started in beer.
Yeah.
I would assume that those other products are different enough to where you would almost have to go back, maybe not to the very beginning, but pretty close to it to learn how to do that.
Yes. I bet you Sean, the owner, would have a different answer than I do, but we, or at least I, try not to chase the trends. We try not to jump on any bandwagons. We try and stay true to ourselves. That's why we have so many different offerings, everything from a hazy IPA to a Bochet mead, to a fruity cider, to a Schwarzbier, German Pilsner. We try to kind of hit all of the marks. Sean said his favorite beer is, the one that sells the most, which I don't disagree.
Is that the one that I'm drinking right now? The New England?
That one's probably our most popular. Yeah, is the Lushable Crush, our hazy New England double IPA. But we just try to create the most delicious, freshest product we can. And then I think if we're passionate enough about it and we can show the love that we put into it, then even if it's not something you may have enjoyed, like this carrot cake seltzer, you may find something that you're like, wow, this is actually interesting and something I may not have thought of before. So yes, we try and keep our ear to the grindstone. We see what's selling. Obviously, if, the seltzers, we pared those back. We used to have many different flavors. We're trying to trim it down a little bit. But, again, since we have the ability to have so many different ingredients and put so many different products out into the market, we don't get stuck. Which is nice. We can always pivot. We can always use a different ingredient. And we can even blend the ingredients too. We have a cider that you'll have to try before you leave, which, cider and mead combined, cranberry raspberry cider. So having so many taps, having so many ingredients, I think it allows us some flexibility and some freedom.
And what I've also noticed, which is interesting, is that those locations that have the wide variety, that don't specialize in one or two styles of beer, and I think you and I can think of a couple breweries that are in the area that are like that, but the ones that have the variety also tend to be the family-friendly ones.
Right.
I guess how were those two just thoughts of why you liked Bootleggers and wanted to come here? Or is that something that you sort of tried to develop in terms of bring a bigger variety, more people will come?
Well, I think when I got here, they already had the selection of taps that we have here, the 28 taps. So I wanted to just, I guess, keep with the variety that we had, stay true to Sean's vision of, it being a place to come hang out where everyone's welcome. And I think that is absolutely what we have here. Sean will spend hours just walking around, flapping his gator, talking to anybody who'll listen. And just knowing that, you can just see him smiling at the table. It's just a welcoming place. So with that being said, I try to make as welcoming of drinks as I can, the most approachable drinks, while still having a little bit of flair.
And I was going to say is because you also mentioned that you like to develop and kind of push the envelope a little bit. Is it difficult to push the envelope and really go to the places where you want to go as a brewer, but still maintain an approachability so that people that aren't necessarily beer drinkers or beer culture people that, have kids that are doing their math homework on your bar top, can still come in? It seems to be if you go too far in one direction, the other direction suffers.
It can, and that's one of the other things that we have to constantly juggle and balance. But it's fun to try different things and to see what people will try. For example, we just did a dry hopped cider, an offering that we hadn't given before. It's very light, 5.2%, super dry, dry hopped with Citra and Mosaic, just a little bit, but it barely tastes like cider. It doesn't taste like hops. It just comes together and it tastes like a sessionable brut champagne. So that was fun to create, and it's also fun to offer. Like, here, try this. Oh, you wanted a Prosecco or you wanted a Chardonnay? Try this instead, just on a whim. And, maybe half the people like it, maybe half the people don't. But to see people try it and see their eyes kind of open wide, those are the moments that make it worthwhile and make you keep trying. You're never going to make everybody happy, but we can try and make as many people happy as we can. I mean, we even got homemade root beer and cream soda for the kids. So
you might like that.
Yeah.
And it sounds like you've also got some other things kind of working, such as the wet hop project that you were telling me about earlier, which I feel like 10 years ago would be unthinkable for anybody here in the state.
Right. We just got a fantastic opportunity to go to the UF IFAS facility down in Wyomama.
How far away is that from here?
It's about 30 minutes south, not far at all. Yeah. It's right next to my house, pretty much 10 minutes from my house. So it was a nice drive there out into the country, if you will, if we can call it that here. But they've got, I think, just about 1/8 of an acre right now of what they've got planted, but we got to go into the field. We got to see the Cascade hops that they're growing. I think, they've got 9 years that they've been doing it. I think 2016 was their, inaugural year. They do it to try to see if we can successfully grow hops here in Florida. And I think they've proven that we can. One of the challenges that we have, as far as I understand, if I've learned everything I could from the hop field day, is that it's the length of time that the sun is out each day.
That's what I've heard.
So in the Yakima Valley, the Pacific Northwest, they have between August and September, I think 5 or 6 weeks where the days are longer than 15 hours. We have a lot of sunlight here, but our days usually don't last that long. So what they did is they built essentially a trellis system for the hops to go up, the hop binds to go up, but they also at the top installed growing lights that they can turn on and extend the growing cycle, the growing day, and then that combined with our temperate weather here, we actually get 2 harvests a year. So we'll get a spring harvest, which they're about to do here this week, and then we'll get another one in the fall. That helps close the gap between the plants aren't as bountiful here as they are in the Pacific Northwest. So having those 2 hops helps put us in line with the production rate per acre to make it a viable place. Not only is it great to have hops here in Florida and have the access to them, but something as simple as dividing up our country's hop crop prevents diseases that otherwise may get taken over the Yakima Valley. We would hopefully be separated enough from that where we could still have some production.
Never would have even thought of that.
Yeah.
Have you tried the hops that are coming out of there in terms of like, how is the hop quality? How are beers made with the hops? How is that quality? What is that?
We, during the event, we got to sample, 2 different beers, that some local brewers, made with the Florida Cascade hops from the UF IFAS facility. One was a honey wheat and one was like a fermentation forward, like Belgian, style. Both delicious beers. It was awesome that they had, tried to really focus and showcase that Florida hop. And I think they both used, grain that was produced in Pensacola as well, which is fantastic.
I didn't realize that we had a grain
program
in the state.
There's not a lot, and there's not a maltster here, so I think they still have to send the malt or send the grain to get it malted. But regardless, that was an awesome experience to have, and it was a great thing for them to produce those beers and try and stay as Florida focused as possible. What I would like to do with this hop harvest that's coming up this week is do a wet hopped like a pale ale. We don't get the opportunity to do things like that here in Florida because the hops are grown in the Pacific Northwest. And as soon as you cut from the vine, it's a plant, it's produce, it's going to start to decompose. So, usually we don't have the opportunity to brew a wet hopped beer with fresh hops off the vine. So it'll be an awesome opportunity. What I would like to do if, the UFIFIS facility is gracious enough to allow us the amount of hops we would need, but we would do 1 barrel of the fresh wet hops, just exclusively use those, do a 1 barrel batch and use exclusive whole cone, dried hops, and then do another batch with using the pelletized form, because they'll cut it fresh. We'll be able to access those. That same crop will be able to access those whole cone dried hops, and then the same crop of the pelletized, but also be able to share that back with them so they can get, the sensory evaluation of how did these hops come through. Did they change through the different processes of drying and pelletizing them? Because there's some heat produced when you pelletize it. So I think it'll be fun for our brewery. I think it'll be awesome data to collect, and I think it'd be great to share that data back with the UFIFIS facility.
And what do you think your clientele coming here, are they the kind of people who would appreciate something like that?
I don't think necessarily a lot of the clientele that we get are the cutting edge craft beer drinkers. We are more of a family establishment where, we like to have all those different offerings, but maybe we can change that a little bit and bring some attention to ourselves with this beer, with this opportunity that we get that usually you don't.
I'm not going to lie. I'm super jealous. I cannot wait for that. And it seems like a pale, just something simple, something nice and quiet. Let the hop speak. Just showcase the hop. I think it's perfect.
I was going to do something like the cold IPA that we have with a real simple grain bill, maybe a little bit of rice adjuncts, which I'm not a huge fan of, but it helps push the grain to the background and really let the hops shine through.
With all the things that you will do and all the experimenting that you like to do, is there something that you won't do? Is there something that's just not really who Bootleggers is and who you are as a head brewer? Are there any ways that you won't go?
That's a good question. I guess I haven't met that recipe yet, or that concoction. I mean, we're always willing to try anything. It's interesting. I've got a quick funny story. Is one of our bartenders, her husband dropped off grain for us one day, and it was around Thanksgiving time, and he was joking that we should do like a gravy stout beer. And we kind of laughed about it, chuckled it away. And I started thinking, what can I do? Like, well, I'm obviously not going to do a gravy stout. That's gross. But what could I do that would give you that feeling of Thanksgiving? So to me, when we're cooking Thanksgiving dinner, it's the aroma in the house, right? You get the turkey, but you also get the stuffing, which tends to be those herbs. So I tried to focus on that. I took our kolsch, which is already a bready finish, and then we conditioned it on some rosemary, some sage, and some thyme. And we called it, a turkey kolsch. And that was super successful. Something that, maybe wouldn't have thought of, to an herbed kolsch to, that reminds you of Thanksgiving, but it was so successful we had to make some more.
Actually reminds me, years and years and years ago, one of the breweries by us, the head brewers long since moved on to other things, did a brown ale with andouille sausage.
Okay.
And if you think about it, it's the spices.
Yeah.
It's like, actually it's not that bad.
Right. Yeah.
So, and as I'm looking at a milk set that you have with 10 different malts.
Yeah.
I feel
that's a fun grain bill.
Josh, how do you get that out of the machine at the end?
It is a challenge. And everything here is manual. We don't have rakes in the mash tun. So, it's a workout. I can skip the gym that day. But the smell that comes out of the mash tun and the boil kettle that day is fantastic.
Sounds like it's amazing.
It is.
One thing that I have noticed, and it seems like it is a little bit different nowadays than the way that craft beer used to be a long time ago, is distro. It seems like this is the sort of location. It's like, you want our beer, you have to come to us.
Yeah.
Is that something that you see is just going to be a permanent part of the craft beer industry, especially now and moving forward? If you're not distributing, you probably shouldn't, because you want everything to stay here, especially in Tampa.
Yeah.
Tampa seems to be, everybody expects it.
Yeah. Distro is a 4-letter word for me. it's a double-edged sword. It's certainly something that I think most breweries push for and, see it as a sign of an achievement that you've reached that level where you can distribute. But as we all know, the margins go down a lot when you do that. But not only that, you put control in others' hands. How did they handle your beer? Did they keep it at the right temperature? Did they, if it's a keg, did they clean the lines? If it's cans, did they keep it cold? Whatever it may be. We have been working towards distribution. We have been working with a couple of different companies, trying to see what our options are, see what they need to pick us up, what we need from them. Yes, it would be great to be able to pick up a Bootleggers 4-pack or 6-pack at any Publix or ABC, but that's going to be hard to do on our 3.5 barrel system. So self-distribution is huge, I think, is key. We try to focus on that here with our cans. I would love it if the Florida legislature, I think it's in the legislature now, trying to do more with breweries to try to allow us to self-distribute and not have the distributor, because yes, it is helpful to get their logistical team behind us and to get us to different places, but it's a tremendous cost. So I try to weigh that as a brewer. Do I really want to brew a whole nother batch of beer and only make, $20 a keg? Or, can we keep it here and make, $7 or $8 a pint? So like I said, I'm not a huge fan of distro. I would like to get our name out there maybe in other ways, be part of the community, do events, host events here, be part of events other places, to try and get our name out that way. Things like the wet hop, and not necessarily be in distribution. Now I'm sure Sean's got a different answer to that. I'm sure he would like to be in every Publix and Winn-Dixie and Aldi in the state, but I'll let him keep those goals and I'll just keep brewing the beer.
Nice. Is there anything that you haven't done yet that you've wanted to do? Any recipe, any product? What is the next on the list of, I have to do this before I die? It doesn't sound too sexy, but I want to do a gluten-free beer. I'd like to play with a gluten-free beer, maybe some sorghum, or try some different grains, and see what they have to offer. I know you can use an enzyme and get rid of a lot of the gluten nowadays. I would rather try to craft one on my own. Not that there's anything wrong with doing it that way, but that would be my next challenge. Along with an NA beer, we tried one. We made one. It didn't turn out great, but it was a big learning experience. It's actually quite a bit harder to make an NA beer and make it balanced than it is to make just a regular beer. So that's a new challenge as well. Interesting. Awesome. Thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Hopefully you learned a lot from that episode that I did. I know I left that interview feeling just amazed. And I was able to try one of his ciders, which is part mead, which they're making, obviously, and part cider, which they are making, obviously. And could more kinds of things be happening? I don't know, but that beverage was fantastic. And if you want to read our review on it, it will be coming up eventually at floridabeerblog.com. We are also at floridabeerpodcast.com. And if you want to follow all of our blog posts and all of our new episodes of the podcast, best place to do that would be on social media. Just find us on Facebook, Instagram, Threads, YouTube, TikTok. I'm sure there's some others that I'm forgetting, but they're out there. And you can do that very easily. Make sure to like us and follow us there. If you're going to listen to us on the podcasting app of your choice, we're pretty much on everything at this point. Apple Podcasts, iHeart, Libsyn. Just search for Florida Beer Podcast and you should be able to find us pretty easily. We're even on YouTube. Or if you have a smart speaker, you can just ask the smart speaker to play the latest episode of the Florida Beer Podcast, and that'll happen for you very easily. But if you are listening to us on a podcasting app that allows you to follow us, make sure to follow us so you'll get the updates. And if you can rate us, please give us a nice 5-star review. I think we're at 4.75 stars on Apple, and I'd like to see if we can get that higher, because that way we can help spread the word of Florida's industry to more people, which is fantastic. You will also see, if we go to floridabeerpodcast.com, we are proudly maintained by the good people at Flintstone Media. If you are looking to create or boost a podcast of your own, whether it's for your own personal ideas or for your company, Flintstone Media is the place to go. You can find them at flintstonemedia.com. Our intro announcer is Jeff Brozovich. Field producer is Steve Pekala. Executive producer for Flintstone Media and Grand High Poobah is Jemmy Legagneur. This is David Butler, your host and author, and we will see you next week for another great episode of the Florida Beer Podcast. In the meantime, make sure to crack open a nice beer or cider or mead or whatever you're drinking, just as long as you drink Florida craft.